32 teams in 32 days. This is episode 21, the Pittsburgh Steelers episode. Let's welcome in Nick Farabaugh, Steelers writer for PGH Sports Now and draft analyst for Pro Football Network. Nick, what's going on?
Thanks for having me on, Jake. Not a lot going on right now, just a lot of draft stuff. Obviously, the draft less than 2 weeks away as we sit here. Actually, I think it's 13 days now. So
Yep.
not long until we are hearing the first name called, which will probably be Trevor Lawrence, but until we're really in draft night, and that's obviously, I think, one of the best days of the NFL calendar.
Yep, and even day two, can't forget about day three, and then of course undrafted free agents. It's always a very lively and exciting weekend. But let's talk some Steelers. And I mean, did anyone hate a team more than the Pittsburgh Steelers last year? I know me as a Bengals fan, I sure did, just like any year. But last year that there was a sense around the fan bases that just no one liked them. Throughout the season, what were your feelings on all the hate? Were they deserved? And then what were your reactions to how the season ended?
Yeah, well, I just think the Steelers are one of the franchises, along with like the Packers, the Patriots, the really successful teams, that have just history of winning. They're always winning, and like that's why I think a lot of people hate on them. And I mean, it's the same thing across all sports, right? The Warriors at their height, the Lakers now, everyone hates the Yankees. Like it's a winning thing. And the Steelers, yet again, people were just like, the Steelers had missed the playoffs the previous 2 years. Well, here they are. They're 11-0 again. It's like they're back. You know what I mean? Like, no one wanted to see. Listen, he's greatness and all. No one wanted to see Brady win a seventh Super Bowl except Buccaneer fans. Like, who cared about Brady winning a seventh Super Bowl? Everyone hates him because he wins. He's not, and no other reason, right? So, like, what was the hate deserved? I don't know, man. Because I understand why they hate it. Because like I don't like Tom Brady either. Because again, I'm a Steelers fan and he kicked our butts all the time. And I don't like. Was it deserved? I mean, it depends on what perspective you're coming from, right? Like, well, if you're a rival, obviously, if you are the Browns, Bengals, or Ravens, you should hate the Steelers. Please
All day
hate the
long,
Steelers. They
7 days
hate
a
you.
week.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like Steelers fans hate you too. Please. Obviously, it's just sports. We only hate you because you root for a different sports team, but some of the stuff is just like ridiculous. Like Juju's TikToking was like, that's not a reason to hate the Steelers. Like Juju is so innocent. Like he doesn't do anything great. And that's from Steelers fans themselves too. Some of them hate on Juju because he does TikTok stuff. Like no one cares. And then Claypool got it. And again, it's like, so I don't really care about it. It's just banter. It's sports fandom. And I as a fan, I think sports would be a lot worse off without that competitiveness among fan bases.
Yep. So, like you said, 11-0, then ring together a couple losses, not the playoff success that you wanted, getting bounced pretty hard in the first round against a division rival, Cleveland. What were your thoughts on, I guess, the last 2 months of the season? Because that's really where things really, went south.
Yeah, they were kind of just like those were some of the most miserable times I can remember being a Steelers fan. That's including obviously after Ben got hurt and pre-Ben at that when Tommy Maddox was obviously there. That was a really bad stretch. That was some of the worst football I've ever seen Ben play ever. He was awful the last really 4 out of the last 5 weeks. He actually obviously had a really good game against Indianapolis. He managed that comeback, but he was bad against Washington, really bad in that Ravens game after the COVID pause. He did not look good. And I mean, that the playoff game, he wasn't actually that bad in the playoff game, but that was just, he was just painfully average. And then, he kind of turned it on when it became too late. And they kind of just exposed the holes that we kind of knew were there. But because they were 11-0, everyone was kind of like, it's okay. They're 11-0. Ooh, they're gonna make the playoffs. And then but you could see it like after that Titans game, after they won the Titans game, you could start to see some things creep up on the Steelers, and you could kind of start to see all the issues that they had expanded across their roster. And you knew that, it was probably going to come crashing down. And, you held on to the hope that they maybe could turn it back on. Maybe they had this switch in them. They never had it. And the only reason they were so good and so effective offensively in the first few weeks was because teams didn't realize their limitations. And I just feel like that's also carried into the offseason. I feel like a lot of the Steelers fan base really is expecting this team to potentially pick in the top 10 next year. But then there's obviously the uber optimists that are thinking one more run with Ben. But it's definitely it was definitely a stretch that I think has kind of been a gut punch, and people are starting to realize that I think Ben is on his last legs, and the Steelers are going to go into a rebuild for the first time in 2 decades.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. Big Ben comes back. There's not a quarterback succession plan in place as of now. It's most likely not going to be Mason Rudolph. Were you surprised he did come back? And what does the future of that position look like right now?
Yeah, I'm not surprised he came back. Ben's always talked about playing when he feels he's done is when he feels he's done. And Ben you kind of knew based on how he's talked over the last few weeks, um, prior to the season ending, that is, you kind of knew he was going to come back. He made very clear he thought he still thinks he has the arm talent. I actually agree that his arm is not the issue. I think it's his knees that are the issue. Now that's not a surprise to me. Now you just have to build a team around Ben, because again, he's not what he used to be. But the future of the quarterback position there is obviously it's not there. First of all, I hope you're right when you say it's not Mason Rudolph. I hope you are, because he's not it. And I think he's a fine backup. He's grown into be a capable backup in this league, which is okay. They can give him a second contract. I just don't want him to be the starter. Maybe he can be a bridge QB. That's the most I would want Mason Rudolph to be. There's no way he should be your franchise quarterback. But again, the Steelers seem to really like Mason Rudolph, which scares me a lot. So let's hope that's not it. And I'm not gonna completely throw out Dwayne Haskins, but after what he did in Washington and how that ended, Dwayne Haskins is gonna have to prove a lot to prove that he could be the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And by a lot, I mean Ben and Rudolph are gonna have to get hurt, and he's gonna have to step in the season and play winning football, right? Like legitimately. So the Steelers also, they draft so well that you can look even after, if Ben is gone and Rudolph is the quarterback, they went 8-8 with Rudolph and Duck Hodges. Like they're probably never gonna pick in the top 10, like just naturally. They just draft too good. Like it's simple as that. They have Watt, Minka, and then they have all these other pieces, and they're probably going to draft pretty well over the next few years. And it's kind of an issue. So, the future of the quarterback position is not on the roster. And the future to me is either a trade up for a quarterback or a trade in the league for a proven elite quarterback for the Steelers.
Yeah. So you mentioned Haskins. Now, doesn't seem like he's the franchise guy either, especially with what happened in Washington, the character issues, and just the really bad play overall over what was he 8 or 9 total games started. It just was a mess in Washington. I didn't like the pick when they took him. I was glad that Cincinnati didn't take him, but that didn't work. So now he's in Pittsburgh with Mason Rudolph kind of backing up Ben Roethlisberger. So as a team that you're right, they rarely miss on picks over the course of one single draft. Like, yeah, that there are some bad picks here and there, but over the course of 7 rounds, it's normally successful for a team that's probably not going to be picking in the top 10 because of how well they draft and how well they are in season with all those secondary pieces. How are they going to find someone? Because Rattler, Howell, the kind of the 2 top guys next year, most likely going to go 1 and 2, 1, 2 and 3, something like that. How are they going to find a guy? Because they missed on Darnold. We don't know how intense those talks were, but obviously that didn't work out. How do you think Ben gets succeeded?
Well, there's a few ways. We've seen it over the past years where guys like Stafford, and we've heard rumblings of Russell Wilson and obviously Deshaun Watson. That's on the back burner now, but we've seen guys like that get traded. So it's not a certainty anymore that just because there's a franchise quarterback somewhere that they can't want to trade and want to get out of a place, right? So that's avenue number one. Like if Russell Wilson and the Seahawks have another rocky year this year, and then he becomes available in 2022, I think the Steelers would be among the top landing spots for him. So I think that's a way, potentially an avenue. Well, again, I said a proven quarterback in the NFL. I think they want a mobile guy as their next quarterback. So Matt Canada's talked about that extensively. That's what he looks for in his quarterbacks. So I would expect that. There's a few other avenues. One, Justin Fields drops in this class, or Trey Lance drops in this class, and they will go up and get him. There have been I'm not certain if it's made the rounds around the NFL Twitter at least, but certainly around Steelers Twitter, we have seen lots of Mike Tomlin smoke towards Justin Fields. If he falls, it's very possible the Steelers could make that move up and potentially go get Fields or Lance. So maybe that's the thing. And I truly think it's going to be through a trade up. Like, that's the thing. If they get one through the draft, I think they have to give up significant draft capital. They might be in a situation where they have similar to the Rams or the 49ers, kind of, where they have, a Goff or a Jimmy G, and they kind of have this quarterback. I know there's rumors that they like Teddy Bridgewater. Maybe he's the guy here. They have a quarterback like that can't take them to the next level, but they have a really good team around them because they do draft so well. And maybe that's when they go and get a guy, go up and maybe get, whoever the third quarterback would be next year, maybe a Ritter, a Carson Strong, a Keaton Slovis. There's so many names that could be there in 2022. Or in 2023, just really early, maybe a Bryce Young, a DJ Uiagalelei, someone like that, or who knows when. But I think it's either through trade up or they're going to give up significant capital to get a proven elite quarterback, and that's going to be kind of where the Steelers do. I just can't see them taking someone that's going to fall to them unless, they are seriously high up, like maybe 10, 11-ish, somewhere around there. But they probably aren't going to even be that high.
Right. So Juju comes back. The whole band is back, right? What are your thoughts on him? And were you surprised he came back at all? Similar to Big Ben, maybe a little bit surprised there. He took less money. He got offered more money in Baltimore. He took less money to come back to Pittsburgh. How much, if at all, did that surprise you?
That surprised me. I was surprised because I didn't see Juju getting 8 million. I thought he would get significantly more money. Now, obviously, the COVID offseason probably capped his ceiling in terms of the open market a little bit. I think Baltimore offered him 9+ incentives, and he could have gotten up to 13 in Kansas City, offered 8+ incentives, while the Steelers just offered 8. But he could have made over $10 million in both situations. And obviously, the Chiefs are a really good situation for a guy like Juju, right? Like, that would be a beautiful fit. I was surprised. I didn't realize. I know he's talked a lot about coming back and wanting to be a Steeler for life, but a lot of players say that and then they end up leaving, right? Like, that's something that you see a lot. Juju legitimately, clearly meant it. I didn't expect him to come back. So that definitely surprised me. And it definitely actually altered the draft outlook a little bit because wide receiver was a significant need. They were going to draft one probably in the first 3 rounds before Juju did come back. So that's surprising. And the continuity with Ben is also very key, I think, in coming back here. I think him being the veteran in that room as well. Again, had he left, the veteran in that wide receiver room would have been James Washington, and they wouldn't have had much of a veteran presence. Juju, despite only being 24, has been in the league a good while at this point. So he gives them a leadership presence as well in that locker room that they needed. So, I think having Juju back is going to be really key. They just got to use him right. Paying him $8 million, not using him down the field last year was one of their biggest mistakes, I thought. I know Ben is a little shoddy accuracy-wise downfield now, but I don't think that should not, and repeat this, that should not discourage you from taking downfield shots up the middle of the field, especially. And the Steelers tried doing it outside the numbers. But why? That's the lower percentage shot. Like, if your quarterback can't hit it consistently deep, why are your shots outside the numbers? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And defenses were giving them coverages in the middle of the field that could exploit that. They did it finally against Indianapolis and a little bit against Cleveland late, and Juju suddenly goes off for big games. I wonder why. So, hopefully they use him like that. But yeah, that was a surprise. In my opinion, it was a good surprise.
So Cam Sutton also comes back on a 2-year, $9 million deal, kind of a jack of all trades for you. Played some different positions with injuries, guys leaving. Mike Hilton now gone to Cincinnati. We're very happy about that. But how important was this re-signing?
Oh, huge, huge, especially with Steven Nelson's departure. If they had not had Cam Sutton back, I don't know what they would have done at the cornerback position. I mean, that you look at behind Sutton and Haight, there is almost no one. There's James Pierre, who promising but played like 20 snaps on defense. Justin Lane hasn't shown anything, and then aside from that, it's just like futures level guys and like other speculative guys. So they would have been cooked. Now, at the very least, they have the option to just draft a guy, fill the slot corner or the boundary corner, because what Sutton has is versatility, and I think that's kind of the key point. He can play inside, can play outside, can play linebacker, can play safety. Having that chess piece there and kind of molding your draft plan and being like, very, I guess you can be very versatile and be moldable to how the board falls because of Sutton being there. So you don't have to lock yourself into a boundary corner if the value's there more in a nickel guy, or you don't have to lock yourself into a nickel, or you can draft a guy like JOK, and get him maybe as the versatile slot corner option. Like there, you can draft a safety early if you want to run more 3 safety sets, right? Like you can draft a Trayvon Moehrig or someone like that, a Richie Grant. They have options to like do things now in the secondary. So having Sutton back is huge, and he's really, really grown into his own. One of the smartest guys on the defense. So big time re-signing for the Steelers.
So this brings me to this, and this might be a heated topic for you, I would assume. So James Conner leaves. That was expected. Knowing you and following you for a while, I assume you are not a fan of taking a running back in the first round.
Yes.
Do you think that's the direction that they are at all considering? If that happened, what would your thoughts be?
Well, I think they're going to do it. From everything I've heard, and from everything we've seen, the signs are pointing to one man, and the man's name, Najee Harris. It seems like he will become a Pittsburgh Steeler. That's kind of what it's colliding to. And if he's gone, it looks like it's going to be Travis Etienne. So, it feels like running back is their kind of pinpoint spot. Now, maybe this is just one of the greatest smoke screens I've ever seen, in which case, bravo. And they're going to go and get someone else. They could just go off the radar. I don't know. But Najee Harris just checks every box for them. He has some NFL bloodlines in his past. He's obviously they have a huge need at running back. It's kind of impressive how bad they've been at drafting running backs. And safety and corner. Good Lord, they're bad at drafting backs. I mean, really, you kind of look at that history, it's yikes. And just look at the room right now. It's Kalen Ballage, Anthony McFarland, Benny Snell, Jalen Samuels, and Trey Edmonds. Worst running back room in the league by far. So, I understand the logic behind Najee Harris because they do have that big need, and he's probably going to be really good value because he's probably a top 20 player in the class. At least in my opinion, I think he's a really good player. So at the very least, I think they're going to get a really good player in Najee Harris. But then again, I look at their needs across the board. They need a corner, they need O-line, multiple O-line positions at that. They could use a quarterback of the future. They could use a tight end of the future behind Eric Ebron. They could use an edge for depth. They could use another linebacker. They could use a corner. They could use safety depth. So why are we drafting a running back in round 1? Like, the sweet spot for running backs with value, need, and how they perform is like 35, 75, somewhere in that range on day 2. So you can wait until round 2, pick Michael Carter at 55, and I'd be really happy with that. I think he would instantly upgrade the room, and then you could still have, he can spearhead the committee while you still have McFarland in year 2, a little bit of ground and pound from Snell and Ballage. Like, it would work, I think. But the thing with the Steelers is they didn't get any production out of the backfield in the receiving game. And admittedly, I think that hurt their offense last year because while running backs don't matter, they matter, if you know what I mean. Like, they're fungible because you can find a lot of them around the draft. But when it's actually on the field, I think that they make a significant difference. I do believe that. They're just very easily replaceable. So the Steelers, they need a running back very badly, but the value isn't there. They have too many needs, in my opinion. I don't know where the running back's going to run behind that O-line. The O-line was bad last year, and it really didn't change that much. So where's the running back going to run? And how is it if you're not going to get an elite running back out of the backfield, which means if you're not getting Najee or Gainwell, in my opinion, I don't consider ETN an elite receiver. He's decent, but he's not elite. If you're not getting an elite receiver, well, how's he going to help Ben a lot either? Because ETN's not good in pass pro, and you need a guy in pass pro. Otherwise, Ben's going to get killed because he's not mobile anymore. So it's kind of I kind of get why they're going for Najee, but I would rather wait for like round 3 for Gainwell or Sermon, or round 2 for Carter, or if Javonte Williams drops, get him. But the value it's terrible value for me. That's kind of my thoughts. They're getting a good player, but the value with the need and all the other needs they have, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Right, and I can definitely see that because but like it's a definite need because I remember watching most Steelers games towards the middle of the year when they lost the run game, and fans kind of were saying, oh, it's because Pouncey's not playing, they don't have that center. Then Pouncey comes back, still no help, run game still does nothing, and there were injuries and opt-outs on the offensive line. Everyone had that, but running back is a position of need. They do need to be able to run the football because they weren't able to, and Ben throwing the ball 45, 50 times a game. I believe he had the most passing attempts of his career last season. Like, you guys old. That just can't happen. But for a team that didn't have a first round pick last year, for them to then go spend their 2021 first on a running back, just rough, right? Just rough.
Yeah, and we talked about the impending rebuild. A 23-year-old running back, like in Najee, doesn't really make sense because by the time the Steelers are theoretically competitive again, Najee's what, 27-ish? Like, and then, well, are you even picking up the 5th-year option? Because we know how short running back shelf life can be in the NFL. Now, maybe Najee's an exception, but historically, the odds aren't very good for that. So it's a very short-term pick as well. And the Steelers probably believe they can win a Super Bowl. I'm not buying it, but they certainly can believe that. I think that would be a flawed pick, though.
Yep. So let's kind of talk about the draft. 24, 55, 87, 128, and 140 is where the Pittsburgh Steelers are picking an extra 4th-round pick. Hooray. But so you mentioned the rebuild. If they don't go running back at 24, who do you think that they need to pick to kind of jumpstart that rebuild?
Yeah, well, you kind of look at guys that are likely on their radar. I think JOK would be a wonderful pick at 24 because he's not just a linebacker,
Right.
and linebacker's kind of another position where you look at the value. It's not very good, but JOK isn't just a linebacker, and he's a linebacker, slot corner, safety, and the Steelers have needs at all 3 of those spots. They need another coverage guy. Even with Fitzwilliams back, they can use another linebacker. Obviously, can use a slot corner, so he can be the nickel corner. He can be the dime backer and dime. You can kick Sutton inside and play Pierre Lane on the outside. And he can be a backup safety to Edmonds and Minka should one of them go down, right? Like that's the thing. So he's a great fit, I think, for that defense. And just look at what that defense would be in the future with Minka, Watt, Highsmith, all those guys there. Edmonds is still there. Sutton is still there. And then adding JOK with Bush. The defense is kind of set outside of the D line at that point, and probably the opposite corner spot. But it's a defensive base you can just build around, and that can be the base of your resurgence in 2 or 3 years if you hit on your quarterback. So I think JOK makes a lot of sense. Asante Samuel Jr. is a guy that they've shown interest in, and I'm only mentioning a few of these names. Like there are other guys that I would mention, like Sam Cosmi or like this, but if you know the Steelers, if they aren't at your pro day, and by them, I mean Tomlin and Colbert, if they aren't at your pro day, probably not picking you in round 1. So I'm going to mention guys that they've been to their pro day. Asante Samuel Jr. makes sense. Again, you can build that cornerback corpse with Sutton, Samuel, and hopefully Pierre or Lane can develop to be the successor to Joe Hayden, or you can draft a guy next year in what looks like a very good corner class early on. Other guys that kind of would make sense. I think Alex Leather would make sense because, again, they need O-line help badly. And I think, Leatherwood, even if he doesn't work out at tackle, you let him work at tackle first to see if he fails at tackle. But if he doesn't fail there, you're still getting a guard, and you need a successor to David DeCastro. So Leatherwood could be the successor to DeCastro, and I think that would be a worthy first-round pick because I think he'll be a very good guard if he's not a good tackle. And obviously, if he's a good tackle, well, you have a good tackle. So both, I think, are very good outcomes in that end. So I mean, there's not a lot of guys from the list that I kind of love. Landon Dickerson's a guy I do really like on tape, like first round level tape, but the injury history, man, brutal, brutal.
The
But
cartwheels at the pro day don't turn you on
I
more.
mean, it definitely makes me feel better. The issue is obviously that's like what 3 or 4 months post ACL. So can he stay on the field? It's just worrying. But I really do like it, absolutely. Um, and I I would say this: if they're gonna draft a running back round one, just make it Najee. He's the best player there. And I think he has a better chance of outlasting ETN at being the longer term guy. So
Right.
there's that too. But if you're going to jumpstart a rebuild, I mean, if Justin Fields or Trey Lance falls, go up and get him. Do it. Do it. I know that they have tons of needs, but look at the list of like what they could do with Justin Fields or Trey Lance with that team. I mean, that would be fun. I don't care. I would obviously those guys would kickstart the rebuild. So those are a few options, realistic options, I guess I would throw out there. Guys that I would take, I would heavily look at Greg Newsom out of Northwestern. I love him. Hot take, I think he's corner two. I think he's corner two. I love Greg Newsom. The way that guy moves, the fluidity he has in his hips, his matching ability. He was on a truly elite stretch there before he got injured this year. So I really am a fan of him. So another guy I would look at very hard. Um, Personally, Tevin Jenkins is a guy I would look at very hard for the Steelers. Again, could be the right tackle from day one and could be very good right away, and then has obvious upside. He tested a lot better than I thought he would too. So that's an added bonus to him. And then you kind of look at another guy that I would at least look at. I would look at corner heavily with 24 because I think the corner class up there can work very well. I would look at Caleb Farley, even with the back injuries. I think Farley, if he drops to 24, phenomenal value. And can be a true lockdown corner and can be the corner one from this class if he works out. So those are the guys I would look at. But again, I also listed off guys I think they'll look at. My favorite, I think, is JOK.
So, yeah, I like all those players. One of the biggest Greg Newsom fans here. Probably will finish up QB, not QB, cornerback two for me as well. It's gonna be tough to move JC Horn down, but I'll probably end up doing that as well. Jock, I love, and I love the versatility there. All guys I love that I don't want to see in Pittsburgh. Like I don't like that because they always like I liked Alex Highsmith last year and they took him and now he's a stud. So interesting. But I want to run by, as a Bengals fan, my dream scenario for what you do. Maybe it's possible, maybe it's not. If they do go running back round one, probably not, probably would go defense round two. What if Kyle Trask is sitting there around three and they like or Kellen Mond, like could Davis Mills, could they go quarterback later on to try to find a magic in the bottle Dak Prescott type thing? And I know I'm not comparing Dak to Kellen Mond, but people do that. I don't like it, but kind of a late round guy who might find himself on the field early on.
Yeah, out of those three, I think Mond is the guy they would look at. Because again, Canada's emphasized the mobility part, and then he went to Kellen Mond's pro day, and that's what put off signal over my head. I was like, uh-oh. They might actually be looking at Kellen Mond. And Mond is like, I would love to take Mond on day three with one of those fourths. He is a dude that has talent naturally. The arm talent, the mobility. I mean, just all you have to do is watch some of that pro day tape and watch how that ball comes out of his hands. It's special.
Yeah.
But again, that doesn't make you a good quarterback. Just because you're mobile and can do stuff out of structure and you have a good arm doesn't mean you're a good quarterback. Mond, the thing with Mond is he's so erratic and inconsistent. Like, and he held back Texas A&M at times with his decision making. His post snap processing in particular is awful, and he throws a lot of errant passes when teams switch up the look from pre snap to post snap. His quick processing isn't very good. Now I think he's a hard worker. I think he's a very good leader from what he's shown. But and he could definitely work out. But again, there's nothing that to me shows that Kellen Mond can be a consistent thrower to all three levels of the field consistently accurately. the accuracy part for me has been the biggest thing. Mond was a mess trying to hit. He was at times this guy was Josh Allen out of Wyoming bad, and obviously Allen worked out, but it's Allen is really not the rule. He's more of the exception when you're that raw. So Mond, I mean, man, that's the guy I think they would look at. Dude, I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback. I really don't see it because again, I don't think a Trask does anything to push the needle because they have Trask on roster pretty much with Mason Rudolph. I mean, he's SEC Mason Rudolph pretty much. And so you look at that, doesn't really make sense, and he doesn't even have more upside than Haskins, so I wouldn't even get it. It's that Mills possibly, but they haven't shown any interest in him. So I would expect it to be Mond if it's anyone, Mond or Jamie Newman. Those are the two.
Interesting. So yeah, Newman's name, people don't really talk about him. He had a really bad Senior Bowl. Obviously, didn't play last year and just has been quiet. But he does have some skills. If they were to go with Jamie Newman, how much of a surprise would that be for you? And let's say that they took him with one of those fourths. Is that okay? Is that okay in your book?
Jamie Newman, man, no, he was so
Where does he rank on your quarterback list? I've seen him as high as 5 or 6. I've seen him as low as 10 or 11. For me, he's about 8. I think I have him as my 8, 7, or 8.
yeah. That's probably about right for me too. It's such a bad quarterback class outside of the top five.
Hmm.
Really the top four because I'm not even that high on Mac Jones. But like he's my QB 8 right now, and but I gave him a 6th round grade, and that's really because on his tools. He's horrible with his mental decision and his process. Misses a lot of reads. Can make some nice throws where he dazzles. Ball placement, very tight window throws. But he's also schematically when you kind of look at what he did a lot of RPO stuff. Um, a lot of RPO stuff. So that's cool and all. But like that's not going to be a complete offense in the NFL. You have to be able to, do general things and kind of be able to scan the field consistently, which he can't do. And he can't hit again. He's very bad accuracy wise. There are flashes of great ball placement and accuracy, but it's not consistent whatsoever. Some of the throws he made were just baffling. I mean, some of the things he just missed spot dropping zone defenders, just edge defenders dropping out into the flats. He would just miss them. I mean, it was awful at times, but he's toolsy. He's tough. He's got good arm. He's mobile. And I think Wake Forest really simplified the offense for him and kind of made it easy on him. I really wanted to see what he could do at Georgia this year. I hated that he opted out. I think if he got the starting job at Georgia, I think we could have seen, a stock rise. Because again, I think with Monken, I think Monken would have put more on his plate. I like the fit in that offense for him. You could really get the blueprint for him. But now that you saw that in the Senior Bowl, and nothing really changed from the Senior Bowl to his Wake Forest tape, I think Newman is a guy that's a day 3 guy and a late one at that. He's just a complete flyer. He might not even make the roster if he goes to the Steelers. He has to beat out Haskins to make the roster. And if Haskins puts his head down and works, I think Haskins wins the battle.
Yeah. So let's go back to 24 real quick. You mentioned Jock. You mentioned Newsom. I'll give you a couple players. I'll tell you who is there, and then you'll tell me who you would pick if you're the ownership, if you're the GM. So I'll name you. Okay. So Najee Etienne is there. Zaven Collins is there. Morig is there. Greg Newsom is there. Tevin Jenkins is there. Is that good enough for you, or should I name more players?
Yeah, that's good.
Jock is there too,
Mm-hmm.
because I think he will be.
Oh boy. Okay, so my top 3 are immediately JOK, Jenkins, and Newsom. Tough. I think I'm between JOK and Newsom. Jenkins is tough to pass though because they do need a tackle. If I was drafting for need, like strict need of what I need the most, I'm picking Jenkins. But best player available, which I think they're going to do because they have some aids, I think I'm going JOK here. I think I'm going JOK here because I have JOK as like a fringe top 10 player, and I love what he does. And he just gives them so much versatility. on the field, and I think that there's enough corners in this class to where they can find a guy a little bit later and still have them be more than effective. Like a Trill Williams, Elijah Molden, Aaron Robinson, someone like that. Um, there's a few guys out there. Hopefully the rumors, hopefully maybe the rumors are true on a Faye Melifonwu dropping down boards. If they can get him, I'd love that.
Yep.
But so I although I love Greg Newsome, there's just not another JOK in this class, and what he brings, I think I'll take JOK.
Do you have him above Micah Parsons?
You know, I mean, on my big board I do, but I don't really consider them the same position. Like Parsons is a true blue backer who can give you a little bit of edge ability,
Right.
and I think JOK is more safety actually than linebacker in a lot of ways. So I do, but like JOK is 11 on my board, Parsons is 13, so it's really not a lot. But maybe the off-field stuff. We don't know the validity of the off-field stuff. It's a note to have on Parsons, but maybe that scares teams away. But I just think JOK is such a true blue talent, and the possibilities you can do with him, I would take him over Parsons for the Steelers, because again, they don't really need a Parsons anyways.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of teams don't, but also, we don't know where he's going to be on some teams' board, because going back to August, August, September, he was like a consensus top 5 player, and then he didn't play. Then this stuff came out, and now he's kind of dropping. I look at 15 for New England, him, or for Micah Parsons, and how can we let that happen, right? Like, please don't let that happen, because like I only can imagine what Bill Belichick could do with Micah Parsons.
Oh Lord, and he would make him a superstar, just straight up. And
But
then,
anyways,
and then collect the comp pick after he was.
right, exactly, and just keep. It's a cycle. Exactly, it's a cycle. But Nick, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, Jake. This was fun.
Make sure to follow Nick on Twitter at Farabaugh FB. I'll have it down there, I'll have it down there. But thank you everybody for watching and listening to this episode of 32 Teams in 32 Days, and I'll catch you in the next one.